Hi, welcome to the Hammer Museum. I'm Lauren Mackler. I'm one of the curators of Made in LA 2020 Aversion. I'm so pleased to welcome you all to tonight's conversation with artist Fulton Leroy Washington, also known as Mr. Wash, and the Hammer's own Ikechukwu Onyewuenyi. Today's discussion is the first program we're presenting as part of Made in LA 2020, the fifth iteration of the Hammer's biennial, which highlights the practices of artists working throughout the greater Los Angeles area. This iteration of the biennial is a collaboration with the Huntington Library, Art Museum, and Botanical Gardens. And for it, we opted to present all of the artists' work in both institutions, a kind of mirror show, with a few projects permeating the city and the space in between. The exhibition features 30 artists and is co-curated by Miriam Ben Salah and me, with Ikechukwu Onyewuenyi as assistant curator of performance. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Bank of America, for their support, as well as all of the teams at both institutions whose steadfast professionalism has made the exhibition possible under unbelievable circumstances. And last but not least, I'd like to thank all of the artists of the biennial for their generosity, their work and ideas through this shifting terrain. The show was slated to open last summer, but was greatly delayed by the pandemic. So it's particularly meaningful to gather with you all this evening to launch a series of programs that we conceived of with the artists and that we hope will be an initial point of entry into their work and the exhibition as a whole. I will also say that the show is up, but of course, as of today, Los Angeles museums are closed. We hope that they'll reopen soon and become a safe space for you to visit the exhibition, both at the Hammer and at the Huntington. So for today's conversation, we're focusing on the work of Fulton Leroy Washington, aka Mr. Wash. Mr. Wash was born in Toluca, Louisiana. In the late 1990s, he was sentenced to life imprisonment after being convicted of a nonviolent drug offense. On May 5th, 2016, after he had been incarcerated for 21 years, President Barack Obama commuted Mr. Wash's sentence and granted him clemency. While incarcerated, Mr. Wash began to draw and eventually to paint. His first subjects were his fellow inmates, who he depicted in elaborate photorealistic portraits and often situated in idyllic landscapes, dressed in civilian clothing and free. The works on view at the Hammer Museum are from an ongoing series called the Teardrop Paintings. In these striking and detailed compositions, Mr. Wash captures his subjects' psychological vulnerabilities, expressed in large tears running down their faces. And often, the tears are adorned with miniature scenes within the painting. The subjects represented range from pop celebrities to politicians to his peers. And while in different situations, the various individuals are leveled by the complex emotional interiorities depicted in the portraits. At the Huntington, Fulton Washington presents a new painting, a remake of an earlier work titled Mundane's Market, which presents a portrait subject on the outside. During his time incarcerated, Mr. Wash completed an innumerable amount of pieces, including commissioned portraits that were often destroyed, lost, or sent to their owners. Some are to this day irretrievable. Mundane's Market was one of these, and I'll let Ike and Mr. Wash tell you more about this painting. In 2014, he also completed a large painting depicting then-Senator Barack Obama as future President of the United States and signing a paper granting him clemency. The painting was called Emancipation Proclamation, modeled on Francis Bicknell Carpenter's 1864 painting, first reading of the Emancipation Proclamation by President Lincoln. The painting proved to be prophetic. We, the Made in LA curators, were introduced to Mr. Wash's work in 2019 by artist Tala Madani. She sent us to his studio and we were totally blown away by him and his paintings, his technique, his unique and almost surreal, if not spiritual compositions, and his manner of addressing his subject matter. And so we asked him to participate in the biennial. Today's program will focus on Mr. Wash's work and experience, but will also touch on contemporary theory, criminal justice, and the prison system. Please keep an eye in the chat where we'll include links to some of what will be discussed. Our next Made in LA related program will be with artist Lihia Lewis on Sunday, February 21st at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So please be sure to RSVP for that. And now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Ikechukwu Onyewuenyi and Mr. Wash.
Okay, hey, Mr. Wash, how you doing?
What's going on with Ike? What's going on with Ike, man? You all right?
I'm good, you know. I thought you were gonna keep the do-rag on. You know, I got my head thing on, but
well, I had it on, but it was squeezing my head, getting kind of tight. So I said, okay, let me just go ahead on and see if I still got waves. I used to have waves when I was young. It's like they called them ocean waves, popping.
I've seen your pictures. Okay. So yeah, you know, today is your day. Okay. As you know, I know when the LA Times article dropped, I think the whole website was like going crazy. But so I'm really excited to discuss your work today. But you know, like I know we've spoken a lot, we've had a lot of conversations, but I just wanted to like say beforehand, like, you know, as we talk about things, feelings will come up, you know, a lot of pain feelings. And I think, you know, being mindful as a curator and as a friend, and you know, as someone that looks up to you and is looking out for you, you know, as I'm asking you questions, and you know, I want to be mindful that, you know, I'm remembering that, you know, you have feelings, and you know, if anything comes up, let me know and we can slow down, pivot, you know, because I think oftentimes when, you know, curators are asking questions of artists, they're just like mining and digging, okay, and they forget that that's a person across from you. Yeah. And okay, you know, so yeah.
Okay, I got that. And feelings do come up. They do. And we can't deny what we feel. So what I want to say first, I'm grateful. And I want to give thanks to the Hammer Museum and to the curators, to yourself and to Lauren and Miriam, you know, for inviting me in to be on this platform, to be in this show. You know, I want to thank also the city of LA, you know, for being here. So first I want to just give thanks to those, to the whole Hammer team. There's a powerful team here. And I appreciate each and every last one of y'all for the contribution that y'all are doing to help my life and for me to continue on with this restart. You know, basically I'm still in prison. You know, I don't get out of prison until September the 2nd. So it appears that I'm on the street, but that's it. That's the illusion. It is what it is, but it's not what it looked like. And I'm still in custody, and I appreciate y'all for hosting me, giving me a platform to speak to y'all like this and to speak to the community and to the world. And I want to also have a lot of feelings go out because I understand we have an audience that could reach as far as international. And I want to thank all of you people that's out there that tuned in tonight to listen and be part of this, for sharing your part of your life with me as we go through and look at these pieces of artwork, talk about what happened and how I took the blessing that God gave me and shared it with the families of the people that I painted. You know, it's a lot of these are not a lot of pictures of me. It's pictures of other spirits and souls and the things they were going through in life as I tried to use my hand to express that, to tell the stories that couldn't be told with words.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think
that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, no, I think there's something about your work that kind of reminds me about there's this Christina Sharp, you know, the talk about like the practice and ethics of seeing, being, and caring, you know, and I think, you know, in a lot of your works, and I think Emancipation Proclamation is up right now, slide number one.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be interesting to begin there because I know we were just talking earlier about your lawyer, who you had a very close relationship with, and she's in that painting. But I think beginning there.
No. Yeah, she's not. That one. She's not in that painting.
She's not in that one? Okay.
No, but beginning with that painting, Emancipation Proclamation, let's take a little bit of a journey backwards and try to visualize and think of the paintings that came before that one. Every time there's something would happen in court, and I filed a motion in court, and as I waited for the court to answer, then the images would come to my mind, and I would paint. I would paint me filing motions for bail. I would paint for me being sentenced. I have images for every stage of the proceeding for 20 years. And this painting, the Emancipation Proclamation, is a painting that describes me getting to the end of the last resort of relief in a federal prison. You have to, after you go through all of the courts, the district courts, you make it to the Supreme Court, you get denied there, then the only other reprieve that a federal prisoner have is to go to the president of the United States, whichever president is sitting at that time. And that was all I had left. So when understanding that, I started to formulate this painting. It came to me in vision. I went to the library one day. Someone just told me, go get a book. I got the book. When I opened it up, it was the first thing I saw. I'm like, wow, and I had never really been aware of that painting. And I just took it over and sat down and read it. And then as I read the stories about what was going on, of them dividing the territories to talk about freeing the slaves, it kind of just hit me. But I didn't see those people in there. I didn't see Abraham Lincoln there. I didn't see the Supreme Court justice and the Navy people and everything. As I read the stories, what I saw was all the people who had the key and was controlling my life and my freedom. And so I wrote letters to everybody, and everybody you see in there, I wrote letters. I wrote letters to the president, asking everybody, hey, do you mind if I use your image and to paint it inside of a creation? Some of them sent letters, emails back. It was all done by email, mostly through the prison. And I did save all those emails as well. And some gave authorization. Some completely said, no, I don't want to be in no prison art. And so some sent their pictures in. They sent their pictures in. I took all those pictures, about maybe 20, 30 pictures, to make that one painting. And it took months to do it. Eventually, while I was working on it, Eric Holder, he left, and then Loretta Lynch came in. And so I had to repaint that part and paint him out and put Loretta Lynch in and stand him behind over there with Biden. And so that's how that picture came about. And I have to really, giving thanks and gratitude, I have to really, my hat goes off to James Feldman and Catherine. It's hard for me to pronounce her last name, but the two of them together, I mean, they worked on my commentation petition, and they wrote with me and walked with me, and there was a lot of people that came before as well, Miss Sun. But this picture here describes a scene, which is the last scene. Had not that commutation came, I would still be in prison. And I'm really forever grateful for that. Charles Samuels, he sits there. He was the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So he had a key to the prison itself. Yeah. And then Eric Holder, at the time of Loretta Lynch, they were the chief prosecutors for the United States. So they held the order to order Samuel to open the door. And then the president, being the chief, it was his decision. And so there it is. The pen is still inside of the bottle. The letters in the original picture, you could actually read every word on the letters. One letter, one of the letters, the one to the right, which is Neil Eggerson, which is Obama's lawyer. My son wrote a letter from prison. He's serving life as well, which he comes up in the Cali card picture, sitting in the middle. He wrote a letter. And I took his letter and rewrote his letter into the letter to Neil Eggerson. And then I wrote another letter in the petition, part of my petition, on the letter sitting in front of me, which is the commutation petition. And I was not gonna sign it if it meant I had to plead guilty. That's why my hand is pulled back, pen in the bottle, the paper about to fall off the table. So, yeah. We could talk about this picture here for hours, because if you notice, when you look into this specific painting, there's also paintings inside of the paintings.
Yeah, no, there's the Last Supper in the back. And yeah, and for those who, I think Mr. Wash was referencing Francis Bicknell Carpenter's painting that he was reading about, and that's what's this is adapted from. But yeah, there's a lot to kind of like sit with and talk about within this painting. You know, even the fact that you said that your hand is pulled away. I didn't even know that that was what the intention was behind that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think about when you painted this, you didn't know yet whether you'd be granted clemency. So I know something we've talked about is like this prophetic element within the painting. You know, like
I had no idea. It's, you know, we continue. I've been denied so many times that I don't get emotional or turned away with the denial. It becomes just a new start, you know. So at the time when we did it, we didn't know that I think that painting was completed in 2014. I think it was 2014. So that was 2 years before I got a commutation, you know. And I painted the picture, say, okay, I'm gonna file the petition, and then we'll wait and see what happened with this one, you know. And what happens in this painting was really curious is that I took the time to take all of the motions, as many, not all of them, but as many as I could get painted in the picture. And there's a bookshelf behind Charles Samuel. That bookshelf is for legal books. And every one of the numbers on each one of those books is a time that I got denied. And so if you type those numbers into the computer, you'll get my case again. So part of what was going on in creating this painting was that they were trying to bury me in a system up under a false name, up under false charges, and so forth on. And I'm constantly trying to tell you I'm innocent and tell the truth. So I'm writing inside of the painting the cases that they denied, where they denied me. I'm making sure that my prison number is in there, that's never forgotten throughout history. You know, if I die in prison, that people will know that I really did exist as a person, that I really did try. I tried to show what was going in from the inside the prison, from the people, even myself. I had no voice. I would write letters to my attorney, and my attorney would never get them. So only thing that was making it out was my artwork. And I continued to paint, draw, and send my message to my children out. You spoke about the Last Supper a minute ago. The Last Supper, I changed it. I took and put the prison guards in the Last Supper. Them are real people in there as well that was actually living the life and sharing the life with me. So I took and put Will Russell, who was my supervisor and who assisted me with finding images of the different people. And he had access to the computer, and they authorized him to work with me. And we worked together for years. A lot of love and props go out to Will Russell, the rest of the staff there at the prison. I put them all in.
Yeah, I think we'll circle back. It's interesting how you asked people's permission before you painted them, and you know, I think I wanted to slide back to, you know, before this painting, you know, and I think there's a story that you shared with Laura Miriam and I about when you drew the witness who would corroborate your story. And I think you drew this perfect sketch that helped to kind of identify the person. And then, you know, you made this promise to yourself that you would kind of like continue to practice and so forth. And I guess for me, I was thinking about like, you know, it reminds me of, there's this in Toni Morrison in Beloved, she talks about this idea of rememory, which is like when you forget something, you know, but then you recall it. And I always wondered, like, you know, clearly this practice of art was with you before you even got into prison, you know, and it seems like, so talk me through some of that, like when you knew you had this ability and when you started to like really harness it, because I know you talked about how the 21 years you were in prison, you know, you were using that as a space to kind of become an artist, but it seems there was that inkling or proclivity before that, you know?
You give me a lot of credit, you know, and I appreciate it, because the drawing is, when I look at the drawing now to what I do now, it's horrible. I laugh. I have to laugh, man, because listen, you know, being blessed with the ability to have eye-hand coordination. Okay, that's a lot of people call it this or that, but it's eye-hand coordination, and a lot of time things are in the mind's eye. So if you visualize it, then you still see it, and then it's like use your hands to deliver. Well, what happened with this is, you know, we were in, I've already been convicted. Let's go back to, I'm gonna catch on to your story. I've already been convicted, and finally, after being convicted, I get a new attorney. And in fact, it was Karen Smith. If some of y'all might remember her, she worked for CNN News as the legal analyst, and she covered the OJ trial. So she would always be out there every evening, you know, talking. I didn't watch TV, so I didn't know that at the time when she came on board. I don't watch TV, so I've been there fighting for my life. I don't got time to watch and play games. So anyway, she takes my case pro bono. I have no idea that she's, you know, she's a TV celebrity or whatever. She's a professor at the college. She teaches lawyers and trained judges or whatever. I have no idea about any of this. Anyway, she comes in and she's, you know, trying to actually help. She actually, you know, traded her life to try to help me. And she asked me, say, well, look, you know, they say you was over here doing this and that. I see you be drawing these butterflies and these little cards and stuff for these guys, because every time you come into the visiting room, everybody head always turning. They be saying, he did it, mama. That's the one right there. He the one did it. He did that, daddy. And so she wanted to see. So I brought some of the cards and envelopes that I was doodling on and bring it down. And she's like, these are really, really good. And she say, do you think you could draw the people that you work with? And I'm like, what? Are you serious? I never tried to draw somebody, you know, and they're not there. You know what I'm saying? And so I went back to the unit, and I looked around and found somebody who had a head shape and something like, and asked them to sit down. And I sketched them. Then I took that sketch of them and added the features that I can remember from the guy, you know, the dreads, the depth of the forehead, just little stuff, you know. And it was a really, listen, it was, the request cut me so bad, it's like, she's trying to blow me off, you know. That's the way I kind of took it. But I went ahead, I told her I would do it, and I went and did it. She did come back in 3 days, you know, over the weekend, and, you know, she asked for us, and well, you asked me to do it here, you know, and I give it to her. She takes it and have it copied and go back to the job site, pass it around. So little kids was following her, begging, you know, we want one, we want one. You know, she going, it's her and the students from the college. They pass them out just block by block. You know, have y'all seen this man that's leaving them on the doors and talking to people? So she tell one of her students to give them one to get rid of them, because it's like 6 or 7 kids. And when she give it to one, all of them ran around him. And then one of the kids in the group say, "Ooh, that's Jerry," right? And she heard it. They went back and say, "You know him?" Yeah, he lived right around, you know. And they went and found him. Well, next thing we know, 3 or 4 months later, after she did interviews and her own private investigation, which I didn't know actually was going on, we had a court hearing, and she said, "You're going to be surprised." And they came in, and even the Hispanic people that didn't even speak English told them exactly what I've been telling them for years. You know, what I was doing that day, what happened that day. We had a water main that had broke, and we worked into the night doing that. And this was at the same time when the government said that I was somewhere buying chemicals. So I cried in court to hear them people, you know, to hear the translators say exactly what I said, and to hear the marshal said, "That's what you said." You know, he could never know word for word verbatim the events of the day unless he was there that day, unless you was there that day. And he described, you know, what were 2 Black people working on the job. I was the supervisor, and we had the plumber, and that was it. And he told me the exact same thing, but they didn't let me go. I still end up being sentenced to life, 2 lives in prison. And it took 21 years to get back. So that's Karen Smith, Professor Karen Smith from Southwestern University of Law.
Ooh. You know what's interesting about that? And I didn't even know the whole, like what you told us initially, but with this added layer, it almost goes back to the whole remembering thing. Because she talks about how Toni Morrison says, remembering something Sefer had forgotten she knew. And it's like, without like you clearly had forgotten what these men had looked like, but you used these men in the prison as proxies to jog your memory. It's almost like you almost knew, but you had to have. So it's like, yeah, shout out to remembering. You know, it's.
Yeah, I mean, even now with us talking now, you know, it is a nice trip to the past. You know, I can get back to certain parts of what you consider was relevant at the moment. You know, a lot of things I think that happen in memory, it's not relevant. You be in a room and you looking at me, I'm looking at you. You may look and see something behind me that's relevant, but I don't see that behind me. You know, so I'm looking and seeing you, and what's behind you is relevant. You know, so yeah.
You know, there's and I want to shout out, I think UC Santa Cruz, but they've been doing this program called Bar in Freedom. It's had some really interesting folks on there, but Herman Gray, Nicole Fleetwood, but there's something that they were talking about, and I think this is an interesting segue to think about, you know, the painting and even the drawing that you did, but like they were talking about how like the act of like creation or visualization is kind of like something that is tied to colonialism, and it kind of prevents the way to kind of, if visualization is tied to colonialism, they were making the argument that it's inherently impossible to use like painting or visualization as a way to abolish something. You know,
I disagree. I think you can abolish. I think that for me,
right. So I think.
Go ahead. You think?
Yeah. So I think to what you're saying, I think you use the painting and the drawing to kind of like push against, you know, the fact that visualization can actually help to shift things. It can help to move things, you know, and maybe you can speak on that a bit, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, art and drawing, painting, music, it's all a part of communication. When I teach art classes in prison, when I taught welding and blueprint reading and construction on the street, we were able to be artistic in the remodeling and decorating people's homes. So taking that same type of energy to make a statement, you know, with the art, it's a way of communication. It was a way for me to tell a story, you know, and if those stories, words become images in my mind, and the artwork in turn is like a translator. It sends back to the viewer words and ideas. So yes, you can change things with a series of work. You can push, the work can push an emotion. You know, when people sit down and tell me their stories about what happened to them in their life, sometimes I'm emotionally connected to it, and then I'll just draw out or paint out what I feel. It's like painting the blood or the DNA of all your ancestors, or, you know, really connecting to the people. People cry. They come and tell me their stories about how much they love their wife, how much they love their kids, how much they miss them. I start to feel that. And then I start to translate that into finding a picture of them at the right angle, the right perspective, in order to tell the story, so that when the viewer, when these things get home, this is how the wife see her husband. This is how the child see their dad, you know, and they can see and feel that that's them. It's not a character. It's not what's that dude called, SpongeBob? It ain't, this ain't SpongeBob. That's Daddy right there, and that's me and Daddy Tears. And then, you know, sometimes the kids come in like, Daddy, was you really crying? Was for me? You know, and you know, then it gets emotional. I'm getting emotional now thinking about it. You know, yeah, it's a way.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, not to harp on Toni Morrison, but she talks about the thought picture, like the thought picture within Beloved. And I think, you know, to what you were saying, paintings carry words and they instill things. They can move people to kind of like think things anew or think differently, you know. I think to suggest something else, you know?
Yeah, it can. It very well can, because when I look at, aside from the paintings that I did for other people to tell their stories, the paintings that I did to capture the surroundings that was around me as I went through the prison yard, I also was able to, in a sense, correct a wrong. You can move because here, you know, we had a situation where I'm in prison saying that I'm this drug guy that did this and, you know, went and bought these chemicals and did all of that. It's a lie. All the words, these words are all lies. So I have an opportunity where I can argue and tell you in the motions that, look, I'm innocent. I didn't do that. But those are words. But you can take and change the words, remodify them, restructure, change the definition of them, but you can't change the painting. So you have an opportunity with art to tell the truth as it is now. And as long as that art is alive, then that truth is still there. You know, so I can really go into a lot of things. I think even like when you look at, okay, a current story that's going on now, we're going through this transition from one president to another president. We're going through what they had. We just had an insurrection at the Capitol. Okay. So we see what we see. Everybody saw it. I mean, pretty much the whole world looked at it. You can't deny what you saw. So now the words come. That was a picture. That was art captured in the moment.
Right.
But now the words come. Now the trial comes. So now they'll take words to try to make you understand that you didn't see what you saw. They'll try to do that, right? So as they go through the trial and they try to say, well, you know, this happened or that didn't happen. The truth is, each person that looks at it, they interpret, they feel something different. So I created a painting.
Can they move to the painting?
Pardon me?
They move to the painting. I think, is that the painting there in the back?
Oh yeah, that's the painting in the back. Lil Wash. Yeah, this is the painting in the back. So while this is history going on right before our own eyes, while people have a lot of different words to say about what happened, and we all have a choice of look. So I painted this painting, the one of the little kid wearing the flag, and I got to give a shout out to Bryson and to his mom, Sean, for allowing me to paint her son. I titled this painting, if you bag it where you get the whole view of it, it's titled Targeted Insurrection. And there's a story. Now, when I looked up insurrection, it's like one group is trying to take the power, overthrow another group. And I look at what happened in 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Go into Oklahoma. Right. This is a work in progress to all the audience out there. This is not what it's going to look like when it's finished. It is what it is, but it's not what it looked like. The shape of that bust out piece inside of that is the shape of the state of Oklahoma. And that flame that's coming out of that corner of that building, that's exactly where Tulsa sits on the map. And those planes flying through there dropping bombs, it was like an insurrection. They had people that was in power running their own life, doing their own thing. And then another power of people said, well, we don't want you to have, we're going to take that, get you out of that power. You can't have your own banks. You can't have your own stores. You can't have your own supermarkets. And they took the power that they had and they had an insurrection. They rolled them up out of there. They burned down the thing. But on the other hand, on the other side, we have the shape of Washington, D.C. That's the shape of Washington, D.C. And inside of that is the Capitol. And that was the insurrection that just happened like a month or so ago. And if you look in, you'll see the people climbing up the wall, Capitol building in the back. The same smoke and fire that's over there from Oklahoma just happened to drift over into the other one because I see them both as being the same. It become a target. What they was trying to do with this new election coming in, reaching out saying, okay, we're going to help some of the Black and brown people. Okay. These people saying, no, you can't. They can't have that kind of power. So the insurrection, even though it was directed toward the Capitol, still was directed toward the people. So when you back away from the picture and look at the whole picture, right? And you see there's a young Black kid crying with tears in his eyes. He's patriotic. He wears a flag. He's representing the United States. But at the same time, in his own DNA history, when he was doing good, he couldn't do it. They burnt that down. And now when you try to get a government in there to help you, they burnt that down. Then when you zoom in, you see bullet holes all through the canvas. And so it became a target. So anyway, that's just a story being told. And
I think it's interesting the correlation you're drawing. And you know, what happened with Tulsa, I know then the city is only now reckoning with it. And hopefully what happened to Tulsa doesn't, you know, get mirrored.
Right.
In terms, you know, we saw what we saw, you know, and hopefully, I want to pivot to the next slide, Velasquez, because I want to think about, and I think what you were saying earlier about thoughts and rejecting the thoughts and using the painting as a way to kind of like shift new thoughts, you know, with it, Emancipation Proclamation, you know, you're making the argument that you're innocent. And you painted yourself within the White House of all places that was just stormed, but you're making the claim that you're human, you're a being, and you're free. And I think I wanted to kind of like link this with Velasquez in a way, because you know, he's also painted himself in there. And I think there's something about how, you know, the element of history painting is showing up across both of your works in a way. The element of painting the self to avoid a sort of captivity, you know? And I guess it's a different type of insurrection, you know, that's kind of like going on in Emancipation Proclamation, because, you know, you paint yourself as a convict.
Right.
Into the White House, seeking your freedom in a way. So it's a different type, but I think with Velasquez, it's interesting because, you know, people kind of like, art historians have kind of regarded how he was painting that to kind of like articulate his position within the royal court, you know, and to stake his claim as, and to stake his claim as a part of nobility, but also an artist. Because I think Velasquez at the time in the royal court he was appointed there for noble business and less so for his art, but he wanted to remind folks that, hey, I'm an artist also. So, but I think it's interesting how you guys are doing something similar in painting yourself within the canvas, you know, to kind of articulate your freedom, you know?
That's good. You know, as you mentioned it, I can see it. I can actually see that, you know. He's painting himself into the royalty. He painted himself right there with him. And I paint myself right there with him. I feel as equal as anybody on the planet. I feel that we all are human spirits experiencing life in human form, and I'm equal to the president, the kings, the queens, and I should be free to communicate, move with them. I bring something to the table. I bring myself to the table. Regardless of what y'all bring to the table, you know, you want to bring paper to the table. I bring my whole self to the table, and I sit there with you, with me. That's how you know, and I see him doing that in his painting. You know, he's in the royalty, he's into the castles, the palaces or whatever, but he's bringing himself as an artist to the table. I'm here, I'm capturing you, but I'm also here as well. I'm not just here capturing you for the world to see, but I'm also here too, you know. I like that. I like the way that you put that together, Ike. That's great. Thank you.
I think one thing to think about is maybe the next slide. The Cali, slide 3, I think.
Cali car? Yeah.
Cali car. You know, and I think going back to the whole idea of paintings having this power, and I think when you told us how, when you painted this, and the sad reality is a lot of the work that you produced in prison was either thrown away, destroyed, and whatnot. And this work was confiscated, and it's not even finished. I don't think it's unfinished, right?
It's unfinished. It's unfinished. They got Cali car has a story that resonates deep. You know, as I walk through that journey through the valley of the shadows of death, as we so call it, all the people in this painting is from California, but all the people that I painted, I never painted any while I was in California. So these are people that came through transit from all kind of federal prisons all around the United States, but they sometimes only passing through. And you run into them like, you from LA? You know, you from Frisco? You know, these are people from California, but what are you doing, you know, here in Colorado, up on the top of this mountain? And then they tell you about their journeys, you know? And so as they would come through and they'd be introduced, this picture took months to do because everybody was never there at the same time. And then because my whole ideal of creating Calicar was because I have a son doing life in the state prison. So I put the state there first. And then inside of that state is my son inside his cell. And he's been there since he was 17 years old, and he's 50? Yeah, he's about 50.
Yeah.
47, 50, 47. Yeah, about 47 years old. But I painted myself outside with the concept in trying to tell the story that using federal law to trump state law, I could get my son. But because art is always interpreted by the person who views it, the prison decided to say that because I have a sledgehammer in my hand, I have shackles on my feet, and I have handcuffs, so I'm in custody. I want everybody to know I'm in custody. But even in custody, I'm still fighting for my family and for my son. I'm trying to get him out. I'm using federal law. I'm sending him cases. He sent me what he got. I send him what I think could work inside his case if he could ever get to the end of his line to where he can bring it over to federal court. He have some room to have a review. They said I was trying to escape from prison because there were broken bricks down on the ground and I had a sledgehammer, and that I was painting little pieces of the story inside of the paintings. So they took my painting and they kicked me out of the art room for 90 days. I couldn't paint nothing. I couldn't look. All I could do is look through the window. I couldn't even go in the room and teach my classes, you know. But yeah, that's Calicar. And Calicar has a lot of people. A lot of them are dead now. You know, a lot of them people died in prison. They never made it home. And I said, I remember them. Yeah. It's a lot. That story, it goes really deep. It's even more deeper than that.
Yeah, it goes back to the whole, like, the potency and the threat of, you know, artworks within prison. You know, I think, and it's, you know, you hear about like books getting banned in prison. You know.
Yeah. Yes. Art. Listen, it's funny thing about that when we talk about art and the way that they ban stuff. They after this painting here, this was like one of my last really creative paintings. I can't be creative. I couldn't just tell the whole truth. I had to find other ways to speak with art because the punishment of their interpretation. You know, I did a painting while I was there at that prison where I felt like an animal trapped. So I painted my head on lions, on owls, on birds, even had painted my face, me in a collaboration painting on a silverback gorilla. And I'm proud of the work that I created and that this whole little series of artwork that I'm trying to send to the street so that the family can put on an art show, maybe raise the money to hire a good lawyer to get me out of prison. And I sent it to my son. And the state interpreted that because it said that because of the silverback gorilla that he's the BGF, which is a terrorist, according to them. And then they said, look, his father's the BGF. He painted his head on a gorilla. And they punished my son for my artwork. So not just that I get punished for painting one with him in it. When I painted one with me and sent to him, he got punished. And it took him like 6 years of fighting, or more, maybe even more than 6 years of fighting just to get that label off of him. They put him in solitary confinement behind that and wouldn't let him go because they was able to use images as part of their way of classification. And he had in his possession a silverback gorilla, which means black. The BGF is the black gorilla family. So I'm black. Okay, I can't help that I came out black. I used to be white. Everything was all good. Then it happened. I turned black. So now I got to deal with everything that black people got to deal with. I see it from both sides of the fence. And so,
yeah, it's I'm kind of speechless. It speaks to, you know, I know you started the talk mentioning how you're still somewhat incarcerated, so to speak, because, you know.
Yeah, I'm still on federal probation.
You know, so it's I think it's maybe we can dovetail to a body of work that is somewhat different. Okay. If you go to the number 5. slide number 5. I think
Oh,
it's I think it's just to kind of like show the range, of
yeah.
your practice, because but I think there's something about this, a lot of your work that we've seen and the public has seen is very figurative, and
Yeah.
this is still figurative, take a piss, take the piss, but there's something kind of like surreal about it.
Okay.
I'm thinking about your work within kind of like Afro surrealism, in terms of this hybridization, a type of like disobedience that kind of like. But can you talk a bit about this work and when you painted it, and a bit of backstory? Because I'm always drawn to this idea of like the water, big tub. Talk to me about this.
Okay, so this specific painting that you're looking at now is called That's a Pisser.
Mm-hmm.
I was inspired by this painting looking through, I think it was Southwestern Art or one of the art magazines that they allowed in the prison. And you actually say, can you tell me when you painted? I can't, because I never paid attention to time. That would have killed you trying to have a life sentence and know what day it is, what time, what month something happened. But I can say where I was at. And I painted this painting in Leavenworth prison, and I was there from 1997 until 2000. So it's somewhere in between. That's probably, and this is an early painting. I was not able at that point to really control the brush and the paints to really do people. And I seen statues. So I did a whole series of paintings of nothing but statues just to learn how to do gradients and shades. And this one here really kind of caught me because it was a statue and it has the woman, like urinating into the tub on the guy sitting there. And when I saw it, I felt like the whole world, I'm doing 2 life sentences for a crime I didn't commit. I felt like the whole world was pissing on me. And so I titled it, That's a Pisser. And just took it and turned the picture that I seen of a statue into, tried to making my own personal skin color, which it looks a lot brighter on here on this camera. But I tried to, create the colors of skin, of the black skin, and work with the expression of the faucets are urinating into the tub, male and female. Your wife or your girl or whatever, she's urinating on you. The court is urinating on you, and that's the statement. It's like everybody in the world is pissing on me, and why me? And that's how I felt. And I did a lot of sketches. I didn't get a chance to paint that whole series, and I'll be glad when I find my sketchbook that has the complete line of, I think it was 6 different drawings of different human emotions that I tried to capture in that style of art. Yeah, that's a pisser.
No, it's
listen, there's another story that goes with That's a Pisser. Okay. That's a Pisser was sent home from prison to my daughter. And my daughter had that picture hanging in her house or whatever. And
it's the one that was in.
Pardon me?
It's the one that got lost and found in Goodwill.
She had to move out of the apartment. She put everything in storage. That painting right there went to storage. Then she lost the storage and lost that artwork with a lot of other artwork. It all just got sold off through storage. So when I come out of prison in 2016, somewhere around 2017, I started to meet people in the art world, and they was trying to buy the artwork. And I wasn't selling any artwork. I wasn't going to sell any for 3 years until I figured out, learn something about art. Anyway, we had this one collector, Will Smith from the other gallery. He had been like coming to every kind of event I would have. He'd come by and just visit, and and he was very supportive on anything I needed, from finance to canvases to work on or whatever. And he shops at thrift stores. He goes to a thrift store, and he remembered my logo, the way I signed my art, and he bought that painting, and he bought one of my child, my daughter, and my grandson, called Neon Love. And I had told him, after he wanted to buy the paint, I actually prayed. I asked God, I said, look, man, what am I supposed to do? Everybody's asking about this artwork. What am I supposed to do? So God answered me and said, look, you can't take none of that with you when you come to go with me. So what you do is divide it into categories. And if it don't have you or your family in it, sell it. So then I called Will and said, look, man, okay, if the picture don't have me and my family, and even that one signifies me, but that's really not my face, then, you know, anything that you want outside of that, it's for sale. So when he came, he remembered that. And so when he bought the 2 paintings he bought from this thrift store, he bought that one, and he bought Neon Love, which had my daughter and my grandson and myself in it. And he came and gave me that one. And in my mind, I was furious, because I couldn't understand, how did you get my artwork? You've been following me around for 4 or 5 months trying to buy stuff. Where did you get it from? And I'm almost ready to fight. And he's like, whoa, hold up, man. You know? And just lucky enough, we had the film crew was with us, so we do have a little bit of footage that goes along with that painting of that day, as we described it. Because I thought I was going to go there and he was going to have some money or something that he wanted to buy a painting, and instead he came and gave me the one, the Neon Love, and then he said, I have another one, and then he showed me that's a picture. He said, but I'm going to keep it, and he did. You know, so yeah, that picture there, that described a very dark time in my life. That one, when I was first incarcerated, still a little distorted, kind of angry, disappointed, felt like you was losing everything in life. I'm losing my company. The children are starting to grow up and I'm not there. I haven't saw them in years, you know, and it's just all I'm bombarded with thousands of sheets of papers. Every week is more and more stuff coming from the court to try to bury me deeper and deeper. And I spent the 20-something years looking for the needle in the haystack. And I found it. I did. I found the master.
It's interesting. I guess we can go one of 2 ways. We can pivot into the teardrops, given this idea of water that is happening in That's a Pisser, or we can dovetail mundane. Because I think the idea of this work going out into the world, then getting lost, and then circulating back into someone's hand that you know, because it could have, like, the synchronicity or the serendipitous nature of, like, someone you know finding this in a thrift store and buying it. It could be anything. But I think it speaks to mundane's painting that is on view at the Hammer and The Huntington.
Yeah.
You can go to that slide real quick. I think that's number 15.
Yeah. Same thing. Same. You know, we started out on to do the show for the Made in LA 2020. And they selected this painting, the Mundane's Market, out of my photo album from prison. You know, in fact, it was several paintings that they selected. And the thing about it is that when I painted pictures for people in prison, I never kept their identification, their addresses, or anything. You know, I would paint the picture and get it sent to whatever address they wanted. And I had no way to contact Mundane. All I had was a picture to explain the part of my life that I traded for the painting. And so it's like 4 months go by, and it had got to the point to where they really wanted the painting. So I tried to paint it again from the little photograph, a little 3x6 photograph. And I recreated this painting. It's not the same as the original. It's a little bit different. When I created the original back in the early 2000s, they still had food stamps. And so food stamps is, I think, painted in the original.
Right.
And then the recent one painted in 2000, in the early 2000, it has EBT card. So EBT cards didn't exist back then. So we have some little upgrades to it, but the message is still the same. You know, one is painted in the prison, one is painted out. It has a story about a lot of people across the United States, as the word went out that Mr. Wash is out and he's looking for Mr. Mundane to get the painting, and people just came up from everywhere. Like, I seen him over here, I seen him over there. And so I'm running back and forth everywhere and can't move from this address, the phone number don't work. Eventually, I do get, I started leaving voice messages. And one day, Mundane called me and he said, hello, is this Ant? And I'm like, no, who is this? This is Mundane.
that's what you know, I think I like what you said about the generational wealth tidbit. And, you know, there's this body of work, and we can only find Mondane because that was the only one. There was like 3 other paintings that kind of depict this kind of exterior world of the inmate, you know, of these individuals, you know, like you said, they had lives beyond their incarceration, you know. And I think what this work with Mondane captures is one of Mondane's many businesses. And I know I think when I was thinking about the work, and Laura, Miriam, and I, we were talking about how, you know, there's an element of the monument as captured within this painting, and even thinking about the painting as a type of monument, you know. And I think there's this, I think an Instagram post that I wrote when I was like, you know, your work brings up a lot of feelings, you know. And I think I read this essay by MoMA curator Leah Dickerman, and, you know, she was referencing this 1940 book by William H. Moses Jr., this architect, called The Negro in Virginia. And, you know, within that book, she was talking about how, you know, how can we create counter monuments? And she was thinking about this book, The Negro in Virginia, as a type of counter monument, because, you know, she was talking about, and thinking about the book and this map as a type of counter monument, because, and I'll read from what she said, you know, if we think of the monuments as an expression of forms of collective memory, as doing a type of political editing of the past, then the illustrated end papers by William H. Moses Jr. could be considered as a kind of counter monument that traces the achievements of Black citizenry from slavery to present. And I think, you know, thinking about Christina Sharp, the afterlife of slavery is kind of the carceral system. And if you think about how, you know, a lot of the works that you produced, and, you know, with these exterior paintings that we wanted to show, if you can go to slide 13 and 14, these paintings were paintings that you painted of the people's lives, but we couldn't find them. I know you were like looking for these 2 paintings. And then these 2 you couldn't find. And it's interesting how, you know, just by the nature of the carceral system and how things move out and circulate in the world, things get lost, you know, and it becomes difficult to find. But I think when you called me that day to say, hey, I found Mr. Mondane, I'm flying to Kansas City, I was like, hold on.
I remember that.
I said, let me talk to the Hammer, you know, we gotta approve this. I think I called my boss, Melanie Crater, to like, can we get this approved? And, you know, institutional time moves slower than, you know, real life. But you went down there, got the painting and came back. And there's a level of like gusto that you knew that if I get this painting, even though the show is going to open in a couple of weeks, it's going to be in this show.
Yeah. Right. And what really was crazy about that, and the energy that was put into that trip, is that the plane landed. I flew out in the middle of the night. The plane landed, early in the morning, and I had to be back on the plane in the afternoon, and I didn't know where I was going, so I had to go in, navigate, find a map, find a store to get a box, to get it boxed up, get the tape, so it's like we get there. Then we get there, and then Mundane had to change her mind. It's like he don't want to let the painting go. It's like, man, you gonna bring my painting back? I'm like, look, man, come on, we're not gonna go through this. I mean, we on a big yard. We ain't really out. You still on parole? I'm on parole. Listen, the parole officer say we can come out on the yard. Listen, I'm gonna go back in my unit with your painting. When the next time when the yard open, I'm gonna bring it back. So. It was, I had to get back, and then it started storming and raining, and it got to where I couldn't even use the Airbnb. I mean, not the Airbnb, but the what they call it, the Uber and Lyft. It would have took them too long to get there, so I ended up just saying, look, I'm gonna just pay your wife, man, just take me to the airport, just straight, and we got it. We made that painting there. That painting there has a lot of provenance to go with it for how it traveled. It is in excellent condition. It's really, really good.
It to your point about the condition it is in, and it goes back to the whole question of, I know last week we spoke about reimagining the museum and like collections and archives and museums keeping things, that this painting is in Mandane's house and is in impeccable condition. It goes to show that, is the museum the only place where objects of value or artwork can exist?
Right.
Like so it's, I don't know, it's interesting to think about, after all these years, Mundane has kept this painting meticulously.
He treasures it. He treasures that painting. That was his ideal, and he divided his resources and shared them with me to help try to get me out of prison, but at the same time to capture his story, because the opportunity, you never know how long you're going to be in one institution or another, and they'll send you away. But he treasures the painting. He treasures the memory of the life that he had before it was broken by the penal system. And he kept that. He kept it. I mean, he kept it nice. I had to give him props for that.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is going back to, I think Nicole Fleetwood talks about making trouble. And I think you were meant to be in that show, right? I think Nicole had reached out to you.
Right, I was supposed to be in there that's one of what I feel bad about. Like, people feel, his family, Mundane's family, feel bad that they didn't make it in that painting. Some of the politicians feel bad that they didn't make it in Emancipation Proclamation. I feel bad, Nicole. I know you're in there watching. I feel bad that I didn't make it in because you came to me early on and asked me. And a lot of these things that's going on out here, I just didn't understand how to do and how to even load the image into the computer to do that. In prison, if you don't have 5 years or less, you have no access to a computer. You can't do anything. So for 21 years, I didn't really get much access until I volunteered to be a tutor and use my art talent to help the people with the computer, with the artistic things in there. I could draw it out and make it on the computer, so I did get a little bit of experience in the end.
Yeah, it's interesting. Herman Gray has this comment, like in that kind of like Barring Freedom series, he talks about how, prison and the carceral system and abolition is like a theater of struggle, but he's like, how do we act out and construct a conception of self that exceeds the boundaries of the self as defined by the state? And I think the whole Mundane story of you kind of like going to extremes to find it is you kind of like making trouble in a way as to kind of like think about yourself beyond how the state defines you, because they're watching you 24/7, watching your stuff, but you have to like think about yourself beyond the confines of the carceral system. Even though you're moving around, like you said, you're telling Mundane we're still on the walk, still on the yard.
It's just a visible fence. That's all it is. It's still a visible fence. a lot of time people, sometimes their whole life, like we have the painting that's up on the screen now, I believe, Sands of Time.
Yeah, Sands of Time.
Sands of Time it tells another person's story. This is the person, not just that I tell the stories of the people that was in prison, but also people from out the prison in the free world had stories to tell. And this one here happened to be from Paula King, which she's painted into the painting. And it's a story about her brother. Her brother went to prison when he was young, when she was a teenager, a very young adult, 18 or 19 years old. And she started to visit her brother in prison. And now she's 67 years old and she still visits her brother in prison. While his life, like the sands of time, is being, his youth was covered by incarceration, which is represented in this picture as the grains of sand. So you see the old man just being turned and just withered into sand, at the same time burying the young man, all behind the glass, all behind the wall. And then you see him looking at himself. You see the eyes behind him looking at himself. In the tears, you see the tears of her in her brother's eyes as she looked back at both of their lives, that she just spent the last 50-something years running back and forth to the prison, sending packages and so forth on. And it appears that but even now, I was talking to her recently, she's still fighting to try to get him out. But it takes sometimes it takes more than a lifetime to remove. It's easy to get in. You'll get in there and get behind that wall and get to your bunk within about a couple of weeks. But it's not that easy to get out. It's not that easy. And it's just a whole bunch of back and forth bureaucratic political stuff. So Sands of Time tells the story of a person who maybe made a mistake. I don't know a lot about his case, and he could never be delivered from that mistake. He went in way before I went to prison. And then I done went in and did 20-something years, and he's still in there. And he's about 70-something years old now. 80.
Yeah, it's I know the point you made earlier about, like, when you were talking about that's a pisser, like not knowing time. So it's interesting how like time is reflected here in this way that is somewhat like, like an hourglass, it's gonna take an hour, but in a way there's an element of ambiguity. There's an element of like a lack of precision other than 0 minutes, 60 minutes, similar to what you said about that's a pisser, 1997 to 2000. It could have happened in time. So it's interesting how you're playing with time here and the ambiguity within the prison system.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of like, and maybe we can shift to the teardrop paintings, but it's a teardrop painting, but you've added some additional elements to it.
Okay, which one is that?
Because I think Sands of Time is a teardrop painting, would you say? But it has.
Yes, it's a teardrop. Hands of Time is a teardrop painting, but it kind of like, it has a story inside of the tear in that one, and it has another story outside of the tear for why they cry. Why do the person with the tears, why do they cry? You have both. You have what's going on in the tear, inside of the tear, and then you have what's going on outside of the tear, looking at two different perspectives. One person looking at the perspective, and they both the same. It's like the figure eight, like kind of like what I did in the Kobe piece. That little black mama steak in the eight form, the yin and the yang. It's a continuous circle. Yeah.
I think what's interesting also about these two paintings, if you can just go back, these ones is something, and I think what we were drawn, Lauren, Miriam, and I were drawn to about this painting was how you've almost kind of like introduced your process in the top corner. Like you've painted the image of the inmate.
Yeah.
That's, because usually you're painting off of a reference image, so that you've included that reference image in the top corner. So it's like this.
What I wanted to show is that, as an artist inside of the prison, and people don't know, when you look at a finished piece of work, you see the art, you like the art. It's a person of a figurative person of a male, female, human body, or even a horse or a dog. But if you don't see what the reference material was that you started from, how do you know if that is the same person or is it just a human emotion? So here, you know, the only pictures we had was either you had two choices. You could sit there and come back day after day, and then that became problematic with the police there, the guards in the prison, that they didn't want people that wasn't in the art room to ever come in the art room. So I did a few still life where people sit there and paint. Then I had to revert and start working off, give me an image. So either something out of your photo album. This specific guy, he didn't have any pictures of himself that was being sent in from home, and he couldn't afford to get a picture taken. So all he had was his prison ID, and he was a Hispanic guy, and he played music. He was a musician. He said he could play the guitar real good. He just loved the guitar. You know, so if you look at it, you can see the waves are splashing up and actually strumming the guitar. So I kind of played the guitar into the rocks and then did an ocean wave. A lot of it from memory. You know, when as a child, I used to be down at Palos Verdes on the rocks fishing. And so some of those memories came back and in and out of my head. I was able to flash that. The same with T.I. When T.I. was saying that he was going to go to prison, that's the word that came into the institution, that they're going to lock T.I. up. He's going to jail, you know. So some of the people in the prison knew him, you know, they was part of that circle, and they brought me about 300 pictures. They brought me about 300 pictures of T.I. from the little party that they gave. And so I grabbed those pictures and created that painting out of it. I put Tiny in T.I.'s tears. And then I also, Lil Wash, could you show that one? The one of Tiny up top. And I actually painted, I didn't have it down. So I created both of them. I did a set for the husband and wife. So Tiny has T.I. in his tears, and T.I. has Tiny in her tears. So the pictures that you see on there are the reference pictures that I used to paint the pictures. And I would have to do is, because it was very expensive to have that, to take pictures in prison, I would make sure that I could know what my reference was. I would tape the photograph to the painting, and then I would take a picture of the painting with the photograph, so that when you send it out and people would say, oh yeah, it do look like the person, you know, and then they would come back and ask me to do stuff. Yeah.
Does T.I. know about this painting?
You know, I met T.I. one night I was doing volunteer work on Hollywood, and he came with his entourage, and I was trying to show it to him, but I didn't know how to work the phone to bring the picture up, and his patience wasn't long enough to stay there and wait. He did, we did end up sending a picture, and I did not talk to him on the phone, but talking through somebody, but I could hear him in the background, and he was like, why you put tears in my eyes? You know, so yeah, he do know about the painting. I'm not sure if he knows everything that's going on in my life as an artist, you know. But I don't think Tiny ever seen hers, because I couldn't pull it up, but I did send the guy that knew him, one of the security people at the little comedy club. They told me, said, yeah, he come here all the time. I'll show it to him. So that I think the next week, him and Tiny came down. I think he showed it to him, because I forwarded the picture to him, you know. But when he was there and I could have had a chance to talk to him, I didn't know how to work the phone. I was stuck.
I think something that I want to like bring up, and you know, there's a few kind of like references to thinking about portraiture in the digital age, you know, and I think with a lot of these teardrop paintings, you know, there's this element of the glow, and given that you're working from like digital photographs, it almost feels like a lot of the portraiture has this kind of like sheen from the kind of like the light source or whatnot. So I think there's the element of like the smooth canvas, the brush stroke being super minimal. It's just interesting to think about this idea of portraiture as kind of like digital technology kind of like comes into focus, and the fact that you're using digital technology as a type of reference image.
Well, what I do with the digital technology, I do use it as a reference, and I do a combination of both. You know,
Mhm.
I take with every picture I take some of what I see, and then I try to make it my own. You know, so I use it for reference material, like with Mr. Renee Manpower, Mr. Renee, John McCain. I find a digital image or even an analog image, and I will start with that, and then I will try to my best to feel the emotion that the person is feeling. You know,
Mhm.
like we did a whole series on political tears, um, and I could only imagine what it would be like as I could hear the news. I didn't really watch the TV and watch it, but you hear all the chatter all over the prison yard about what was going on, and that was debate. Whereas I hear those words of everybody talking around me, then it formed these pictures, you know, and I would
Yeah.
grab who is this guy? Who is Reverend Wright? And what's going on with Hillary? You know, Hillary, she thinks she's gonna beat Obama, you know, and da da da, you know. So my thing is, you know, I would pray on it and ask God to reveal to me what it's going to be, you know, and how does that affect the person? And then I would paint that. So I had a vision back in 2007 when I painted these pictures, political tears, that Obama was going to be the president. And so I painted him as the president inside of Hillary tears because she was running against him. And I can imagine it saddened her. So I painted him. If you go inside of the tears on that one, you'll see all the graffiti coming down, and Sasha and everybody is all waving. And so I grabbed some images that I kind of created and made my own little scene. And then Obama, at the same time, he's not president at the time when I painted the picture, but he's being kind of somewhat derailed or have to use a different type of energy to achieve his goal because of his pastor, Reverend Wright. And I was like, I asked the people on the yard, man, y'all, somebody bring me a picture of Reverend Wright. So all the inmates would bring the pictures, and I would sort through them and pick the one I would use for reference. And so I try to take the digital images and then add my own personal emotions and touch to it, what I feel.
Yeah. So we have a few questions, and folks, if you have questions, shoot us questions so we can.
Okay, so I'm gonna walk away from the screen for just a minute while you get get the questions together. Okay.
Yeah, and maybe we can go to no, we can like zoom into there's I know Mr. Wash has like a huge African audience. So if you can start at slide 9. But it's something that kind of like intrigued me as Mr. Wash is, I think he's going to the restroom, but is how the element of portraiture within some of Mr. Wash's works kind of like mirrors Ghanaian portraiture that was used in barbershops. You know, it's an interesting kind of parallel. If you go to the next slide, but these were like early on in the, I think in the up until like the 1990s, they were painting this, and it's almost kind of like a way of invention. You know, if you're a business owner and you're trying to bring clientele to your store, you know, in lieu of making a sign, because, you know, it was difficult, you just get like a painter to produce this this work to kind of draw audiences. And it's I think it's just interesting how there's kind of like a semblance with Mr. Wash and his kind of like aesthetic. But also, I think if you go to the next slide, just also thinking about how his work is also similar in some ways to some of Kehinde Wiley's work, you know, in terms of the close crop onto the of the bust, different background. But, you know, even with Sands of Time, you know, there's this engagement with like the background and the foreground. But okay, you're back.
I'm back.
I was telling people about the close affinity between your work with some of Kehinde Wiley's paintings and portraiture,
Nice.
but also kind of like Ghanaian posters within barbershops. And I know you have like a huge African audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just kind of like telling them about the similitude between them. But I think one of the questions that we had, and I think this also goes to show, thinking about your emphasis on portraiture when you were inside, someone asks, are there artists or particular artworks that inspired and guided your work during time in prison? And I think for me, I was thinking about that because, you know, given your focus on portraiture, you could have focused on anything when you were inside, but you decided to focus on portraiture. And I wonder, you know, what were you looking at? Who were you kind of like, you know, sitting with?
Yes. But thank you for that, for the question. There were people. This is not a journey that fully came all me. You know, we grow by helping and sharing one another and through our observation and experiences. I was blessed to go to Leavenworth Penitentiary as the first prison that they put me in. In fact, I stayed there for 18 months before I was even sentenced. And I was blessed to meet the Indian Leonard Peltier. And I was blessed to meet Tom and John and Leonard Washington. And these were other artists that was already in there painting with oils. And looking over the shoulders of them, even though when I first came in, they didn't want me in, nobody wanted me in there because I was innocent. And so they felt that I was a police plant. They didn't want me in. And it took a while to gain the confidence of the people that I'm not there for a nefarious reason. I'm there to learn how to paint. And they all tried to encourage me not to paint people. They also, not all of them, but when I would ask for advice on which brushes to get, what type of paint should I buy, or whatever, they would always tell me to get the wrong thing. So I spent all of my resources buying the wrong things, painting with the wrong brushes, with bristles. Wow. They had me to buy all the wrong stuff, but still, even with that, the first year I won their art contest. So even not knowing with the wrong brushes, and they would like, I remember it was really kind of hard. It was only 2 blacks in there, an old guy that had been there for 29 years at the time I got there. And the rest of them was, you know, mixed races. But they was didn't want me in there so bad that when they knew I needed brushes and stuff, and they would break them into pieces and throw them in the trash and point to it and say, well, there's some brushes right there. And I would get them out and glue them together and tape them up, and I would use them, you know, until I could slowly afford to buy some. But I learned a lot from Leonard, and I have a lot of compassion for him. I'm part Indian. We part from the same tribe. My grandmother's an Indian as well, and she told the story of him when I was a child. I'd never had an idea that I would ever meet him in life, you know, and I happen to be blessed to sit beside him and paint. I painted several portraits of him. I also have one of the washwares. You notice that we have some washware clothes out here, that my artwork comes out on clothes. So there will be a jacket, hopefully, whenever the Hammer open up for the event, I'm gonna wear a jacket with Leonard Peltier's face painted on it. And I'll probably raffle that jacket off. I'm having an outfit made. So we have artists at each institution. And I think that the ones I just named, Leonard Peltier, Leonard Washington, John, and I see their faces and can't say their names. I apologize to y'all. But moving on to the second prison, which was Colorado, there was Joey, AK-47 Joey. He was an Indian guy as well. He taught me the skill of how to use acrylic, and I taught him how to make people look like humans, right? So he could do animals and stagecoaches good, but the people was always messed up. Then we have one that I'm really, really fond of. His name is Cal Triber. He's an artist that we did several collaborations together. We have about 4 or 5 collaborations. That's I would do the face work and he would do the animal work. The gorilla we spoke about earlier, Cal painted the gorilla and I painted my face and tried to match his style and learn what he knew about color mixture. So yeah, these people are the people along the way that helped the journey. So then you come to Lompoc, the prison which I was released from. We had, I can't think of his name. They had a guy there that was painting murals in the hallways of the prison. That was like his job. And he worked with airbrush. He did a lot of airbrush work. I don't have a lot of airbrush experience. I can paint anything you do with airbrush, I'll do it with a brush. It just might take me a little longer. So we kind of worked together, and I learned some stuff about airbrush painting, about mural painting and stuff from him. And where I didn't have access to the airbrush, I did paint the mural called Home Soil. Is a picture of everybody who died in the war. That painting there is 20 feet long, 8 feet tall. And everyone who died during the time that I was in there, there has another president in that one as well. It has George Bush painted in that one in the corner, and little John Kennedy is painted in there as well. So that's one of my early mural pieces that's in Santa Barbara and in Lompoc, which the Veterans Memorial Building in Lompoc houses 3 paintings, which the state of California gave the paintings and the building historical protection for life. The Obama administration also gave the paintings and the building historical protection, and allocating funds to preserve those images for life as well. And so, yeah, each place I went, there were people who inspired me with their talent, with their skills. They shared with me as I shared with them. And I became better and better and better at telling stories with a brush.
Yeah, I didn't know people were breaking your brushes.
Oh yeah, that was a terrible time. It took a while. It took a while. I mean, it was like to the point they really was trying to pick a fight, but I don't anger. It's like, if you're gonna fight, you got to fight me without me being mad. You can be mad. It's okay. You know, I used to be mad before. You know, I guess I just can't remember.
I guess there's a question, and this kind of even dovetails with, we can talk about the teardrop paintings, but Linda asks, a lot of the paintings document pain and memories from the past. Do you see yourself wanting to stay in this realm, or do you find yourself wanting to move towards something beyond this?
Well, very good question. Was that Linda? Linda. Very good question. The paintings do. You know, the very first painting that I actually painted was dead slaves in the ship called Armistead. Somebody brought me a clip from the picture and it just cut all the way through me. At that time, I didn't know that I was the last person in my family born on a plantation. I didn't find that out until after Obama released me. So yes, the paintings do have a lot of pain. I guess it's built in part of the DNA. And do I want to stay in this realm or move somewhere else? I'm looking very forward to moving somewhere else. I'm only passing through. So I don't try not to get emotionally attached, politically attached to anything, because this whole life is temporary. We're all the spirits of God experiencing life in human form. And yes, this realm is just here for the moment. I'm looking forward to the next.
And I think to the point about, what's I gonna say? To the point about the pain element.
Okay.
And even dovetailing with, you know, your experience when you were learning how to paint. What prison were you in where you first started that triggered the teardrop paintings? Because I know it was, you were listening to Tim McGraw.
Yeah, I was in Florence, Colorado, and I was painting with the artist that we call Big Cal Triber, the one I did quite a few collaborations with. I don't listen to the music. The 20 years I spent in prison, probably the 21 years, 19 of those years, there was no TV other than the news while I wait to go to the paint room, and no radio. So I don't listen. I hear if other people play their music and I hear it, but I didn't own those type of tools or equipment to play music on. But Cal liked the music when he paint, and he's a hillbilly from Montana. And he liked country music. And one day, Tim McGraw's record came on. I don't know why they say grown men don't cry. And it was at a pace and speed that I could hear the lyrics. And it's just like, I just rolled, you know, the words that he was singing painted a picture in my mind. I could just see him going and meeting the girl with the kid, and his reminiscing about his wife and his kids at home, and she's out here in the cold or whatever. And then it made me think about my wife and my kids and how they were being, you know, out there unprotected, unguarded, unled, you know. And that that whole emotional thing is overwhelmed me. I went into tears, and it's like, man, you in federal prison, man, around all these killers, you can't be crying. So I kind of hid behind my canvas, and I'm holding my mouth. I mean, really holding it, because it's about to bust. I'm about to go. And if I go and I start to cry, and people see me cry, they're gonna look at it as a sign of weakness, and I'm gonna have to defend it for years to come, you know, and it could be really ugly. And I barely made it. Everybody was doing their thing, painting, the class was doing theirs, and I hid behind my easel. And that emotional feeling that I felt when I finished that, I went to my cell, and I got a pencil and paper, and I drew a sketch of myself. In fact, I did two. I did one where I was kind of like this, kind of like Hillary. You know, I kind of remember in mind where, you know, you sitting there and the tears are rolling down my arm. And in the tears, I put my wife and daughter like walking away.
Yeah.
They're walking away from me. And the little baby, which is my daughter Leanne, if any of y'all seen the documentary, the youngest girl, where she was saying, well, you know, my friends, they just gone. My daddy on vacation. But she was only like 2 years old. So she was waving by. And that's all you see in that teardrop is the skirt tail, the high heel shoes, the calf of a woman with a little girl with her hand stretched as far as she can to keep her toes on the ground. And she's looking the other way, waving by. I put that in that tear. It had two tears. The other tear was we sitting in the visiting room holding hands when my wife said she couldn't go no further, you know, that she wanted to go. So I remember the letter in the conversation that she didn't feel I'll ever get out. So I painted that into it. So like Linda was saying, sometimes you do paint the pains inside of the images. And then inside of, I don't know if it's in that painting or another painting, I painted the prison tower. And I was in the prison tower in the same position as the whole big face. So you see the big face of me like this. Then if you go inside the eyeball itself, you see the prison bars, and I'm behind the bars looking out as they walk across the street. So yeah. That's the very first teardrop. And now listen, when you look at it, it's really like the drawing you asked about that I did for the courtroom. When I look back at it now, I'm really kind of ashamed, but it is the foundation. Sometimes foundations don't never look as good as the house. You know, you strip it down. So that very first one was really kind of crude. I tried to tell a story, but it caught so many people, and they were so emotionally attached to it that everybody at the prison, including the guards and police, you know, I would go and I would do that teardrop thing for them, you know. Now a lot of the guards, they couldn't deal with inmates, so they couldn't publicly display it, but they admired the work, respected the talent and the creativity, you know. And I would do pencil sketches, they would get tattoos on them. They come back to work like, yeah, I got you, you know. And it'd be one of my artworks on their arm. Yeah,
we have to wrap up soon, but it's interesting that, you know, when you were in the room, the painting room, and Tim McGraw's song came on, wanted to hide that emotion, but then in a way, all these other inmates, from Mr. Renee's cousin, nephew, all these men wanted to like embrace their vulnerability and let you, you know. So it's you know, some, you know, they eventually embraced, you know.
Yeah, I wanted to hide it, right? But when I painted it, and when you paint yourself in the vulnerable state in front of all of these men, right, who's supposed to be killers and OGs or whatever, right? When you paint yourself in that vulnerable state, it actually opened up a door to where they would sit in private, not in public, and tell you, man, I was crying too, man. I was crying, man. Last night I had a dream. And they tell you their things, so they can still walk and hold their lip tight on the yard. Why? Because Mr. Wash was there to take and tell the truth in the painting. See, they can never do that. But we all cry. We all grow. I mean, you hear them at night crying, but when you're in your cell, you just don't know where room is coming from. But in the morning, everybody walk out like, yeah, okay, what's up? But last night, man, listen, I know your voice. I know what you sound like. You were there crying like a baby. I heard you on the phone when you was talking to your girl, right? And you broke the phone off the thing. Now can't nobody use it. I know you was in there crying. But anyway, long story. I would take that emotional stuff and I would put it in the tears. I tried to hide mine, because of the space that I was in. But when I revealed it, it opened up a door that was able to heal a lot of people. And I was able to, they was able to come to me in confidence, and I would just paint the picture in a way to help tell the story without them having to emotionally go through it themselves. And it gave them, you know.
Yeah. There's another question.
Come on.
From Spencer, and this maybe the last question. She's like, what's been the response to your art story from friends and fellow artists on the inside? Do they know about the show?
You know, I don't know, because I'm not allowed as a federal inmate to correspond with the people in prison, you know. So my correspondence with people in prison is very limited. I don't know what they know about what's going on, but I know that should we be blessed to, you know, ever get to the point to where we're doing television shows or whatever, that it would be so inspirational to those to know that the path that I took was a path that led out of the hellhole. You know, because a lot of people would think that I'm still in prison because the last they saw, I run into people on the street now and they be like, they look and they're like, Wash, you know? I'm like, yeah, what's up? And I don't remember them, but they remember me a lot of because of the beard. You know, this beard was grown even longer because it represented the amount of time that I was taken away. Just I read the story of Rip Van Winkle when I was a child, that he went to sleep up under the tree for 20 years and woke up and had this long beard. And so that resonated in my mind during the time when they said that in court that I grew the beard to camouflage myself. Well, I grew the beard now to make sure that you never mistake me for nobody else. And I'm aware, you know what I'm saying? So I run into people all the time. They think that, man, I thought you was in jail, man. I thought you had life. I did, but Obama set me free. God set me free and used Obama to open the gates. So here I am, you know? So yes, that was a good question. That was a good question. I don't know. I think we need to figure out a way. In fact, one of the people who connect with the Hammer, they have a program where we can go back into the prisons, you know, we out. So I don't know how that works with the probation department. I just got that email from the people. I have to respond to them yesterday. They have a program that they go inside of the prison dealing with the youth to try to help re-guide them. They teach art and do stuff like that. I may support that. Yeah.
I think that's a good closing point in terms of being out, being liberated, and, you know, thank you. This is great.
Let me say this right here, because I don't know who all is out there listening, right? So everybody's supposed to get the chance to shoot their shot. Now, it's like a lot of time, and people have asked the question, Mr. Washington, you out, what do you want to do? Well, what I want to do, and I need support, and I'm asking all of y'all out there, I don't know how many of y'all is out there that's in a position to help, but if you are in a position to help, I need a shop. I'm looking for a building. I want to put together maybe a 5,000 square foot building, to open up a gallery and open up a school to where I could do online classes, have in-class workshops, and maybe go back and forth into the prison and back and forth to giving high school trips, field trips to the thing to learn some art, to learn how to communicate with art and not just paint pictures, but learn how to talk and make messages and say things that you can't say. I think it's very healing. So leaving out, that's, you know, I'd like to take artbywash.com as the website host and turn it into a brick and mortar building where I could actually supply and feed the public. You know, I could do the murals and stuff, and as well as any other thing that comes through, and set up some classes to help the next generation. With that, I guess we can close now. Everybody follow me on Instagram, Mr. Wash the Artist on Instagram. Go to artbywash.com. They have the t-shirts, all the artwork going to come out on clothes, handbags, umbrellas, and all that.
I think you're in a show that Melan and AJ Garad, Melan Farson and AJ Garad at Deitch Gallery, Jeffrey Deitch.
Oh yeah, definitely. Shout out to Jeffrey. I mean, that's the main man. You know, he's been very supportive. Yeah, go to the I think it's private showing only right now. We have Kobe picture there, some more artwork. Some of the artwork that you see here in this video will be at that gallery, at the Jeffrey Deitch Gallery next month. We'll have this stuff finished and get that in. So you can go over there and take a close-up hand look, go to the Hammer Museum, the Huntington Library, Jeffrey Deitch Gallery there in Los Angeles. View the work close up. It's different than looking at it on the screen. I tell you, I promise you that. You know, some people think it's little pictures, you know, but it is what it is.
The attention to detail. So yeah, if once things open up, swing by the Hammer, you can see a suite of the Teardrop paintings and also the original Mr. Mundane's Market. And then at the Huntington, you can see the reproduction of Mundane's Market that Mr. Wash painted. And then, you know, the Jeffrey Deitch Gallery.
Okay, you know, speaking of this shout out and going to see those paint, that's really, really great. In the meantime, you know, the Hammer Museum has the things we cry for. Since this thing, we talked a lot about teardrops on here. We have a catalog. I was thinking to actually show one. I have to have one right behind me. You can get this catalog. I don't know if it's showing up on the screen. It's called Things We Cry For, and it has teardrops that we haven't seen. A lot of these are for prison people in there. And it's about a 15 or 20 page book that has a lot of the artwork that I've done in it. You can get this at the Hammer Museum through their store. They have an online store. This catalog is available there. It's called Things We Cry For. It's not just a simple page. It's a simple book. It has a lot of pages in it, has a lot of artwork in it. They got the mundane close-up shots. You got Michael Jackson with tears, so forth on. You also can get this catalog on artbywash.com. So you have two places to get it. Also, we have to give a shout out to the Spark Gallery in South Pasadena. They also Blue from Artworks. He's sponsored me there. So we have, I think we got 9 or 10 paintings, prints. The prints are available. So if anybody would love to have a print of any one of these paintings, go see Blue. Go see Blue at the Spark Gallery. If you're looking for an original, go see Jeffrey at the Jeffrey Deitch Gallery. And with that, I think, and if you're just looking for some, like a t-shirt or something, go to Art by Wash, click on store, and then proudly wear it. You get one like this. This is one right here. This is one.
Hey, that's right. Okay, thank you, everyone. And that's that. Thank you, Mr. Wash. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Bye.